Hello, amazing humans. Today, we're going to dive into shadow work. Is it worth it? So, go ahead and comment below if you think doing shadow work is worth it or not, and maybe why. Okay, so I'll give you just a moment to do that. And I think that this is going to be kind of like a mini series. I'm not really sure. I honestly, I've decided that I'm just going to start talking about things that are inspired. And again, I want you guys to engage with me. So if you have questions, please ask. And I'm going to start with the book that kind of started another journey for me. I read this probably 10 years ago, and this is by Debbie Ford. It's The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And I remember when I first joined TikTok, this was back in September. I had, I kept getting in because I was new to TikTok, I didn't really understand how it worked. And I kept getting the shadow workbook journal or something. It was all over TikTok. It still is. It still pops up in my home feed. And I was like, oh my gosh, shadow work. So I kind of went on this journey of reading this book by Debbie Ford, and I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. I have so many limiting beliefs. If I could just clear out all of my limiting beliefs, I could have everything I've ever wanted. So I went on this deep dive of finding, and it wasn't that hard, all my limiting beliefs. And then I also reference back to Louise L. Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Like I had this book, I believe I probably maybe in high school. I'd have to go figure out when it actually was written. Yeah, I definitely had this in high school. So anyway, so I really just want to talk about whether or not doing the shadow work is important. And honestly, you guys do it every single day. You, whether no matter where you are in your journey, shadow work is always going to be a part of your life. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. You may not want to hear it, but there's always a shadow side. And it's what you do with that shadow side that's the most important thing. So I think just to kind of answer the question, is shadow work important or not? I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to tell you why. And then I'm going to tell you why it's not important. It's not that why it's not important. The things that may trip you up when you're doing the shadow work. So, and this is probably just, I'm going to share my story in this first video, I think. So when I started reading The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford, I was like, okay, this is the answer to law of attraction. Like I'm ignoring what my limiting beliefs are. And if I can just figure out what they are, I can get my shit figured out and I can manifest all these things that I want, right? So I started doing, and I spent 3 years, you guys, 3 years of my life doing shadow work. And I mean, I went all in. And here's what I discovered. It's important to recognize what your shadow is. And usually the shadow is the things that we don't like to shine the light on. So, and for me, I really want my light to shine. I want it to shine so brightly that people all over the world are attracted to it and they get something and they feel better just from knowing me. And I can't do that if my light is dimmed. So if I can figure out what's going on in the background with my limiting beliefs, with my shadow, with the things I don't like, the things I maybe even hate about myself, if I can fix those, then I can fix everything. So again, I go on this 3 year journey. And I can remember, I'll share this story with you. And now I have sticky notes. I wrote out, and I had this full journal, and I wrote sticky notes of things that I didn't believe. And I think I even shared this story here. Like I wrote down, I am sexy. And then I looked in the mirror and oh my God, I laughed so hard. I'm like, this is total bullshit. At that time, I didn't feel sexy. And I thought, yeah, this is why is it important that I feel sexy? But I stuck with it. Now, granted, it's years later. Again, I read this book probably about 10 years ago and spent 3 years working on it. And then, of course, she has other books. So I can remember just looking in the mirror thinking, this is never going to work. Like I was trying to look myself in the eye and I had a really hard time doing it. And again, I'm using a silly one, the I am sexy. Is that really important when it comes to shadow work? Well, yes, it is, because if I don't feel sexy within my own body, and sexy can mean so many different things, okay, you guys? So, whatever you're thinking about the word sexy, if it triggers you or you don't think you're sexy, listen to this. Sexy has to do with self love. That's what it's about. Loving all of the pieces and parts about yourself that maybe society or a family member or a friend or you have talked so bad about that you don't love that part of yourself. Everything that has to do with the shadow work or limiting beliefs, it's bringing it from the dark out into the light so that you can look at it and then decide, do you want to carry this bullshit belief around with you anymore? My answer generally is no. The other part of it too is that there are some things that you might think is a negative, but it's actually not a negative, it's a positive. And I'll give you an example. When I was little, my mom used to tell me, Kimberly Joe, you're so bossy. If you keep being so bossy, you're not going to have any friends. And I was a child. So I didn't think, and I didn't really have a lot of friends. And throughout my life, I've not really had a lot of friends, like big groups of friends. And so I took that internally that being bossy was a bad thing. And then, of course, years later with the internet and all the things, the meme came out. I'm not bossy. I just have leadership skills. And that's true. I mean, it depends on how you look at it and whether or not the word bossy triggers you. So now, do I think I'm bossy? No, I have leadership skills. And so again, it's bringing the shadow that's hidden back here in the darkness, and we're shining a flashlight on it. We're bringing it out into the light. We're looking at it, and then we get to decide what we feel about it, what we want to do with it. And so again, I only have 10 minutes here, so I'm going to try to we're going to keep talking about shadow work, but I really just want to wrap this up and make sure I stay within my 10 minutes. So what I want you to think about, and maybe just in the comments below, write one word that kind of triggers you or is something that you don't have to get super personal. Just use a word. What is one word that you don't like about yourself or something that you would like to change? And then let's spend, some time changing it. And I'm going to give you examples. Again, I think this might turn into like a little mini series. I'm not really sure, but I really want to talk about the shadow work. It was the first thing that popped up when I joined TikTok, and I think it's really important. And the thing that I'm going to end with here is just don't stay stuck. Like, if you look for limiting beliefs, you're absolutely going to find them. And if you keep looking for them, you're going to find them. So, what I found is that if I go live my life and then I get triggered by something, then I can analyze it and look at it. So, we're not trying to find all your limiting beliefs. We're just trying to bring some of the things that are in the shadow, bring them out into the light so that you can shine brightly. Okay. All right, so I'm going to end it there, and I look forward to your comments below. Make sure that if you want to stay on track with this little mini series, that you hit that follow button and save this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have an amazing day. Go be an amazing human, and lots of love, light, and really big hugs. Mwah.